Welcome to our Trump Briefing Show, everyone. Today, we're diving into some hot topics that are making waves across the nation and beyond. First up, did you hear that the US government has cut back on key satellite data used for hurricane forecasting? Experts are sounding the alarm because this could mean less accurate predictions, especially during those critical nighttime hours. With climate change making storms more severe, this move could impact millions living along hurricane-prone coasts. Moving on, the Supreme Court has delivered a big win for President Trump by ruling that judges can't issue nationwide injunctions, limiting courts' power to block his policies. Trump is now emboldened to push forward with his agenda, including restrictions on birthright citizenship, although its future still hangs in the balance. Plus, he's planning to tackle tariffs and trade negotiations, aiming to wrap up deals with key partners like China and the UK, potentially extending negotiations beyond the initial deadlines. Lastly, on the international front, Iran's military defenses were tested by recent Israeli and US missile strikes, but the regime remains resilient. Meanwhile, trade tensions between the US and China are easing with a new framework agreed upon, and the Supreme Court has upheld vital parts of Obamacare, ensuring continued access to preventive health coverage for millions. All these stories show a world in flux, with politics, climate, and diplomacy all playing crucial roles. Please continue to stay tuned for more detailed updates. According to the Associated Press, a significant setback in hurricane forecasting has occurred due to the Trump administration's decision to cease processing critical microwave data from U.S. Department of Defense satellites. This data, which provides a unique glimpse beneath the storm's surface, especially at night, is vital for accurately detecting rapid intensification and predicting storm paths. Experts like hurricane researcher Brian McNulty have described the move as alarmingly bad news, emphasizing that the loss of 3 active satellites' data will severely impair the ability to forecast hurricanes this season and beyond, potentially endangering millions along vulnerable coastlines. The abrupt discontinuation has raised concerns about the broader impact of political decisions on weather infrastructure, with NOAA and weather forecasters warning that this reduction in data could lead to missed warnings and underestimated storm strengths, particularly during a climate crisis that has seen increasingly deadly storms. The Toronto Star reports that President Donald Trump's legal and political maneuvers gained momentum after the Supreme Court's recent ruling that individual judges lack the authority to issue nationwide injunctions. This decision, seen as a victory for Trump, clears the way for him to push forward with policies previously blocked, including restrictions on birthright citizenship. Trump announced plans to swiftly file for these policies and indicated that he would notify certain countries about tariffs, signaling a renewed push to advance his agenda. Meanwhile, negotiations over trade tariffs with China and India are ongoing, with Trump suggesting that a deal with China has already been signed, although details remain scarce. This legal victory also emboldens Trump to continue efforts to implement controversial policies, despite ongoing divisions among lawmakers and concerns about the process and implications of such executive actions. The Associated Press also highlights how the Biden administration is scaling down its evacuation efforts from Israel amid signs of a stabilizing ceasefire, with fewer Americans seeking to depart. Internal notices reveal that flights have been canceled due to a decline in demand, with only a handful of Americans leaving on government flights since the operation began. Meanwhile, in the realm of domestic policy, the Senate is close to finalizing a broad legislative package that includes tax cuts, healthcare provisions, and food assistance reforms, with President Trump heralding a giant win on social media. The Supreme Court's recent decision to limit the power of nationwide injunctions has helped advance this legislation, though uncertainties remain regarding some policies, such as Trump's proposed birthright citizenship restrictions. Additionally, the White House reports progress in trade negotiations with China and plans to potentially formalize agreements with India, while economic indicators show persistent inflation and cautious consumer spending, illustrating a complex landscape of political, environmental, and economic developments. The Independent reports on President Donald Trump's fervent claims of a giant win following a Supreme Court decision that limited the power of federal courts to issue nationwide injunctions. Trump, speaking on Truth Social and during a White House briefing, celebrated the ruling as a monumental victory for the Constitution and the separation of powers, asserting that it curbed what he described as radical left judges attempting to overrule presidential authority. The court's 6-3 decision, authored by Justice Amy Coney Barrett, did not directly address Trump's bid to restrict birthright citizenship but sided with arguments that federal judges had overstepped their bounds by issuing broad injunctions, which critics argue have been used as tools to block key parts of his administration's policies. The article highlights that more than half of the nationwide injunctions in recent history targeted Trump's policies, exposing the intense judicial pushback against his aggressive executive actions and emphasizing the ongoing struggle over judicial authority in shaping national policy. CNN details Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's optimistic outlook on the progress of U.S. trade negotiations, suggesting that talks with 18 important trading partners could conclude by Labor Day, slightly extending the previous July 9 deadline. Bessent indicated that the U.S. has already secured agreements with the United Kingdom and achieved a truce with China, with hopes of finalizing deals with at least 10 or 12 of the remaining partners. He emphasized that negotiations with China and the UK are behind us for now, and expressed confidence that rare earth minerals from China would resume flowing into the U.S., following recent approvals from Beijing. The article underscores the strategic importance of these negotiations amid the broader context of ongoing trade tensions, tariffs, and the potential for reverting to higher tariff levels if deals are not reached, illustrating the delicate balance of diplomacy and economic interests under the Trump administration's trade policy. The Globe and Mail reports on Iran's resilience amid recent Israeli and U.S. missile strikes, revealing a complex picture of overconfidence and strategic endurance. Prior to the attacks, Iran's political elite believed their military defenses and capacity to resist foreign intervention were formidable, but the strikes exposed vulnerabilities, especially in their air defenses, which were largely dismantled early on. Despite this military setback, Iran's regime has maintained internal stability, with no signs of widespread protests or regime collapse, defying predictions of internal upheaval. Analysts and Iranian officials suggest that the regime's survival is attributable to its robust internal security apparatus and historical resilience, even as external threats and internal frustrations from economic stagnation and corruption persist. The article also explores the broader geopolitical implications, including the risk of escalation and the potential for Iran to rebuild its military capabilities, emphasizing that while regime change remains a distant hope, the current regime continues to adapt and survive amidst ongoing regional tensions. The Associated Press reports that the U.S. Supreme Court has postponed its decision on Louisiana's second majority black congressional district, instead scheduling new arguments for the fall. This case, closely watched because of its implications for voting rights and racial considerations in redistricting, involves the delicate balance between race and politics. Conservative justices expressed skepticism about race-based redistricting during oral arguments, hinting at the possibility of invalidating the current map, which could influence the political landscape for future elections. The court's decision to delay ruling ensures that the district represented by Democrat Cleo Fields will likely remain unchanged for the 2026 elections, as the justices tend to avoid disrupting districts close to election dates. Meanwhile, Louisiana's political process has shifted from a jungle primary system to partisan primaries, with new maps drawn in 2022 to reflect census data, maintaining a racial and partisan status quo that civil rights advocates have challenged in court, claiming discrimination against black voters. The Australian Broadcasting Corporation details that China and the United States have confirmed a framework for a trade deal, signaling a de-escalation in their trade tensions. China agreed to review and approve export license applications for critical materials like rare earth elements, which are vital for electric vehicles and defense technology, while the U.S. committed to lifting certain restrictive measures against China. This agreement follows a series of negotiations, including a temporary tariff reduction in Geneva and subsequent talks in London, amid ongoing disputes over export controls and tariffs. The U.S. aims to complete trade agreements with multiple key partners by early September, with officials optimistic about wrapping up deals with at least 10 of the 18 prioritized countries. These negotiations come against a backdrop of stock market gains driven by hopes of improved trade relations, even as some officials acknowledge the possibility of extending deadlines. The Toronto Star reports that the Supreme Court has upheld a crucial aspect of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, rejecting a challenge from Christian employers that questioned the law's preventive health coverage requirements. In a 6-3 decision, the court affirmed that the process by which the government determines covered services, via a volunteer medical advisory board, does not require Senate approval, thus maintaining the mandate that insurers cover vital medications and screenings. This ruling protects access to treatments like cholesterol-lowering drugs, cancer screenings, HIV prevention, and breast cancer medications for millions of Americans, despite ongoing political debates over healthcare regulation. The challenge stemmed from concerns that the advisory board was unconstitutionally appointed, but the court's decision ensures that preventive health coverage remains a key component of Obamacare, safeguarding comprehensive care for a broad segment of the population. The Toronto Star reports that the U.S. Supreme Court has limited the use of nationwide injunctions, a move that could significantly impact President Trump's efforts to alter immigration policies, including his controversial attempt to rescind birthright citizenship, which the court left unresolved. The decision, though a victory for the administration's critics, still leaves the fate of Trump's executive order, which seeks to deny citizenship to children of illegal immigrants, uncertain, with Sonia Sotomayor dissenting sharply and accusing the government of gamesmanship. The court's recent rulings also include affirming the legality of federal subsidies for phone and internet services, protecting key provisions of the Affordable Care Act, and ruling that Maryland parents can object to LGBTQ+ storybooks in schools on religious grounds. These decisions reflect a complex landscape where ideological lines blur, with some justices expressing concern over the proliferation of broad judicial orders like nationwide injunctions, which have been used extensively during Trump's presidency to block policies across the country. Justice Sotomayor and other liberals criticize these tactics as undermining the rule of law, while Attorney General Pam Bondi praised the court's move to curb such injunctions, framing it as a victory for executive authority. As the court prepares to issue final rulings on pending cases involving online age verification laws and electoral district maps, the lingering questions about the future of birthright citizenship and the scope of judicial power remain at the forefront, illustrating the ongoing tension between judicial restraint and executive ambitions in America's legal landscape. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.